Guten Morgen, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. This session will be in German.
Visitors and guests, I would like to continue in English. So, good morning everybody, and thanks for coming. The ITB Destination Days are 3 days dedicated to the challenges and perspectives of international destination management. One of the mega trends we strongly perceive, and I keep calling this like the lava stream under the earth, mega trends you don't have to predict, but they are there, is safety and security. And this lava stream, it surfaced for the first time, the way I see it, 9/11. No? And since then, this topic has really not gone away, and it won't go away. So today's topic, key topic, safety and security in the tourism industry is very important, and it covers the leisure and business travel likewise. Most of the risks of travel are man-made. If you look at the UNWTO categories, there is social, political, terrorism, environmental, industrial, related to health and related to transportation systems risks. We will have here today top-notch experts, happy to have you here, to discuss policy and technology, to show some change of travel patterns, the role of social media. And in the afternoon, we'll have more great topics. Be sure to be in time also for the ITB CEO interview on the power of internet platforms. Here on the hot chair will be Focusrite founder Philip Wolff, with the CEO of Booking.com, Gillian Tans, and then Latin America will be taking a critical look at cruise tourism. And sugar in the bottom, our partner country of this year, Botswana, Minister of Environment, Natural Resources and Tourism, will show how the successes in sustainability have been achieved and how the country is looking to ensure that the legacy shall continue into the future. We would like to thank the sponsors of this convention. Number one, Convention and Culture Partner Slovenia. And if there is somebody from Slovenia here, congratulations to yesterday's World Legacy Awards. Well earned. The co-host, World Tourism Cities Federation. The platinum sponsors are the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, and the Ministry of Culture and Tourism of the Republic of Turkey. Thank you for making this happen. Some technical housekeeping. We are excited to open every session with live voting. You have everybody on your seat a remote control. We would like to get a mood picture for the discussions, and you can immediately compare your views with the opinions of your colleagues. And on your seat you have this little remote control device. We will have 3 answers to the questions. And please let them all show first and then make your choice. And please press only once. No? For every session, please also help by downloading and using the rating app or pressing the feedback button when you go out. We are really happy to have your feedback for the organizers. And we'll have a timer, so if we like to prolong a session a little bit, there will be 1 or 2 minutes extra time, and we will show this here in the room so that you know we are going to continue a discussion a little bit longer. And last not least, every session will be filmed and made available by podcast on the ITB website. I believe this will happen next week in the area of ITB 365. Now I'd like to welcome on stage Alexander Karapidis. He comes from Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering and Organization. And before that, we would like to have the TED question, so you have a little bit of input already to go for. So, we can do little or more to ensure the safety and security of tourists. What do you think about the safety of tourists? Just only one answer, please. It should be increased through a variety of measures. Number 2, should be increased through a few selected and effective measures. Or number 3, the measures taken so far are sufficient. Please press the button now. And while we are waiting, Let's see. Interesting result for your discussions. So, Mr. Karapidis, if I may invite you to the stage. He comes from Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering and Organization. He's a political scientist and has worked for Fraunhofer in Stuttgart since 1998. In his position as coordinator for tourism and as a senior researcher consultant in the field of security research, he has many years of experience with solutions in crisis management related with terrorist attacks and natural catastrophes. And then you will continue to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, welcome to all of you here at this keynote session. So I will start to speak in German now. We have a translation cap in the background, so I hope you will enjoy this. So, herzlich willkommen, meine Damen und Herren.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we all know what the Destination Day is about today. It's all about destination security. Safety and security have become extremely important topics in the world of tourism. And security is not only important with respect to destinations, but it's also important with respect to the impact it might have in different respects. So we thought that before starting off here, you should answer questions so that we get an idea of what you think about certain questions. My name is Alexander Karapidis, and I will introduce the speakers later. Now, these are the questions we would like to ask. Do you feel more insecure when traveling than 5 years ago? Yes or no? Please vote now.
So, sehr ausgeglichene.
Well, that's a balanced result, I'd say. Let's see what the speakers will tell us about the individual aspects to be pondered in this field. This is question number 2. Do new technologies like automatic identity detection and so on make you feel safer? Yes or no? Please vote. So the majority says, I don't feel more secure because of technical systems. Now, the third questions. Do you know any EU security management mechanisms for the civilian population? Yes or no? Please vote now.
Das war jetzt eine Antwort, die hat mich jetzt nicht wirklich
Well, I'm not really surprised to see the voting result here. Question number 3. This is a question about your travel behavior. Yes or no? Please vote. Once again, I'm not surprised by your answer. But it's nice to see the result of an opinion poll, even if the questions are kind of banal. And now my last question for you. This is about whether you are going to travel abroad less in view of the current security situation. Yes, I will stay home more often. Option number 2, I will have a closer look at the destinations before I travel. And option number 3, there is no real security nowhere. Please vote now. Now, the second option is the majority vote here. I continue traveling abroad, but I have a close look at where I want to go. Now, these are quite interesting results or statements. And I would like to now open our session and introduce the speakers. First of all, I would like to welcome I wanted to welcome Professor Bauer.
Ist denn so aus Sicht der angewandten Forschung an Bedrohungslagen heute eigentlich auf?
I wanted to welcome Professor Bauer, who is the director of our institute, but unfortunately he can't be here. He had to cancel his presentation. Or actually, I will give his presentation, and this is about where is a need for action. And I would like to welcome, now this time indeed, Dr. Peter Billing, representing the EU Commission. He is the head of the Unit Emergency Preparedness and Security, and he will tell us more about the mechanisms in the field of disaster response mechanism. He will tell us what systems, what mechanisms the EU has in place in order to deal with the question of safety and security. And I would like to tell you more about a technical solution, and that's going to be the content of the third presentation today. Olaf Juncker will give an example, a solution offered by the Airport Research Center GmbH. They are developing software solutions for airports, and his presentation will show you the range of options, so to speak, between the need for safety and security and what customers or travelers in this case are willing to accept or tolerate. I mean, of course, you can ask for more surveillance, but you do not want to destroy the experience of going abroad, traveling, going on holidays, right? So this is going to be an exciting presentation, I'm sure, and I hope that we'll manage to offer interesting insights to you. Now, as I said, Wilhelm Bauer can't be here today, so I will give his presentation. Destination Security, the Status Quo and the Future of Security Policy and Technology is the title. The first question is, where are we right now? What's the current status? And what are the facets, the different perspectives we have to adopt in order to understand what it's all about? I mean, there are different scenarios of threat and risk, terrorism, but also natural disasters, upheavals in the countries there is a broad range of scenarios and potential risks, but this is not new. And yet, the quality is different today. It's very different from what we were used to in the past. On the one hand, this is due to the fact that the risk situations are more differentiated today, and situations which were considered to be safe in the past are considered a threat or risky today. And that's about how people feel and what they think about individual situations. There is a change of quality also with respect to the attacks or natural disasters. I mean, look at the insurance companies like Münchner Rück or others. They have quite detailed statistical data about the disasters and other events in the world today. And according to their forecast, there will be more such events, attacks and disasters in the future. The last forecast was published a few years ago, but there is also a very up-to-date one, which will be published in spring this year. They're also measuring devices like the Global Terrorism Index, which also assumes an increase of terrorist attacks in the future. And the customers, the travelers who are much more sensitive today, which is also due to the media coverage and also the type of attacks. Where do they happen? Am I near or not? Do they happen close to where I am? Now, whereas destinations could recover quickly in the past, they have major difficulties today. They are under the scrutiny of the customers much more than they used to be. In the past, they could recover within a short period of time. Today, people have a longer memory, so to speak. And it takes longer for destinations to come back. And this refers to travel agents and operators. If you want to help a destination recover, you need to do more than marketing. That's another lesson of the day. Marketing alone, ads alone, won't help you anymore. Now, these are the challenges we are meeting today. Now, in the past, people tended to adopt an approach according to the principle of eyes closed and let's go, so to speak. This doesn't work anymore. Because the traveler, the customer, is interested in safety and security, and that's one of the reasons why the WTO has put this particular topic at the top of the agenda, because of financial losses, which have been the result of changing attitudes among the traveling community of the world, and HRS and operators, other operators, always measure how many trips they sell. Istanbul, 1.5 years ago, was 20% more bookings than it's today. I mean, this is just an example. It's just one spot. It's not a representative figure, so to speak. And yet, it's a significant one, or indicative, so to speak, for operators and with respect to destinations as a whole. Now, we've been dealing with the topic of security in many respects. And we are not focusing on tourism only. As you can see here, the Fraunhofer Institute also deals with cybersecurity, situational awareness and position detection, and the skills and competences in the field of new technologies. I mean, there are new systems we can implement today, drones, surveillance systems, observation systems, and so on. But how should we implement these systems in a given market so that they support the market, help the market overcome a time of crisis? Because you cannot simply go and assume that cameras all over help you solve the problem. Now, actually, these are the three fields I would like to mention today, and these are key fields for the Fraunhofer Institute. Cybersecurity, which also implies booking systems, information stored in clouds. This is, again, a multifaceted theme. And secondly, the field of situations, mapping situations, representing situations, and making clear that we are not living on an island anymore. We need to cooperate. And thirdly, the man-machine interface, so to speak, because technology has to be used by human beings, by the people who need to understand the scenarios in which a given technical solution is to be applied. Now let's have a look at cybersecurity first of all. See the list of activities of the Fraunhofer Institute. I would like to focus on two in particular. This is the cybersecurity check on the one hand, which means we try to check whether the systems applied by our customers are secure. We look at the technical backbone, we look at the people who use or apply the systems, and we also consider whether these are certified systems or not. And then, of course, we are focusing on the cloud. This is a field which is very interesting for all the companies in the industry. How can we use the cloud? Where do we need certain barriers in order to keep the cloud safe? Now, these are two aspects we focus on in the field of cybersecurity a lot. The second field, as I said, is the mapping of situations. Of course, organizations have always mapped situations, have tried to understand what a given situation is about. However, the problem is who contributes which piece of information so that you get a valid idea of a given situation in the end. What are the systems that can be used in order to help with this process, and how can we integrate social media data in order to enhance the validity of the system as a whole? In a joint venture with others, we are using a platform which can also be used by tourists as a mobile service. And this is about the smart sharing of information. It includes elements of communication, so to speak. And this will be part of the future, I'd say, because this system includes the answers too. And this is a project which is very much focused on destinations. Now, we might also go one step further and try to find ways and means to efficiently implement innovative technologies. Let me tell you more about an example that shows what this is about. I'm talking about drones or UAVs. Of course, there are control mechanisms, how to control the drone, how to fly it, when are you allowed to use it at all. I mean, there are certain rules and regulations, laws, which need to be applied in order to decide whether you can use the system or not. But the question is, what is the overall scenario? I mean, it might be exciting or interesting for a hotel to use a drone. The question is, what can this machine do, and what are the requirements I need to fulfill? What are the conditions I need to comply with in order to be allowed to do so, or in order to efficiently use this technology? So this is another field to show that technology alone doesn't help you. You always need to consider the connection between the technical system and the human being in order to efficiently use the system or the technology as a whole. So what needs to be done? Early awareness is key as far as future risks are concerned. Sustainable systems, general or holistic systems, which cannot be applied to one particular risk only, are key. And the collaboration of all parties involved, plus customer focus. We need to consider the customer, the traveler, so that we know what he or she wants. We are offering a series of workshops. This is a series of programs we've developed in order to address all these topics in a period of 18 months. We carry out risk analyses. We look at the state-of-the-art technology. Often people don't quite know what technology is there already, what are the systems I can use in order to address the problem of security or the lack of security and the situation of risk, and what's the state-of-the-art approach. Together with ITB and the University of Worms, we are offering this series of programs. We have also brought you a number of flyers or brochures. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed Mr. Bauer's presentation held by me. And of course, there is time for your questions. If you ask questions, please be brave and take the floor.
Okay, sonst kommen Sie im Nachklang auf mich zu.
If not, go and approach me afterwards and ask questions. Right. Thank you very much.
Kommen wir zum nächsten Vortrag, Peter Billing, und stellen Ihnen EU-Mechanism vor.
Let's present the existing mechanisms at EU level and draw the dotted line to tourism. Okay, Peter, the floor is yours.
I'm very honored to be here. It's a great honor. It's my first time I'm at this ITB mega conference. Excuse my voice. I have been a little bit enrhumé, as you say in French languages. I'm going to talk about security management in a European perspective. I worked for the European Commission, DG ECHO, which is the Directorate General dealing mainly with humanitarian assistance, but also since a few years with civil protection at European level. And I would focus my presentation today on the second part, this civil protection mechanism. I will talk about 4 areas, essentially, very briefly touching on the changing global security environment, the new challenges. I'm try to be brief because the previous speaker has already sort of started the spectrum. I would then focus on the role of the EU as a player in international disaster response, touching upon some interfaces between disaster management in general and tourism. You have already seen technological challenges, sort of procedures and so on, and then give you a flavor of what we do on a daily basis, the EU in action, in different areas. Because it's important, and this is also one of our aims, not to be only responsive to disasters, but also to, say, be a step ahead to prevent where possible, to be prepared, to have the necessary people, competences and means in place in case disaster strikes, and obviously then to provide a response that is adequate to the challenges. Now, we've heard, and it's, I think, unanimously agreed that security challenges are on the rise. There are numerous research institutions, reinsurance companies, you have mentioned it, that have found that the number and the frequency and in particular the complexity of natural disasters are on the rise. We should also not forget technological hazards and risks. One of the sort of triggering factors to activities at the European level, for example, were in the 1980s major oil spills, big super tankers breaking up, spilling lots of oils on the beaches where your clients try to be on the beach and have a good time. And since a few years, of course, also the increase of terrorist attacks and also violent conflicts. I've put here a slide from the CRET Institute. It's a research institute close to Brussels in Belgium. They identified a steep increase in the number of disasters over the last 100 years. A particular increase can be seen in many meteorological disasters, floods, cyclones, and so on, due to climate change. But also we see a steep increase in, let's say, human-made, man-made disasters, conflict and displacement. I have brought here recent statistics from the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, where you can see there is a clear trend over the last years towards increasing numbers of displacement, and we've all seen this here in different parts of Europe in 2015 and 16 when we saw the waves of refugees coming from the Syria crisis. 2015 has seen the peak so far of people displaced worldwide, 65 million people are fleeing or have fled. And unfortunately, I don't think the trend will go down in the next years. But problems and issues are also getting closer to our own home countries. I put you here just two pictures without any text. This is Rue de la Loi in Brussels, close to the metro station Malbec, where there was a terrorist attack on the 22nd of March last year. This is actually just 50 meters away from my office, from the offices of our Directorate General. So you can see things are coming closer. Now, why is all of this relevant for tourism? Well, travel destinations may be disaster prone. Thailand, tsunami 2004. I don't know if there are any Swedish colleagues here. What was the biggest natural disaster affecting Sweden? It was actually the tsunami in Thailand. 534 people, Swedish people killed, apart from all the hundreds of thousands others. Tourists may also become targets of terrorist activities. They may be caught, blocked in sudden outbreaks of violence. They may also be affected by breakdowns of traffic infrastructures. We all remember the unspeakable Icelandic volcano in 2010, I think it was, where tens of thousands of tourists were stuck at different airports. And there, actually, we're getting closer to what we are actually doing to help do this. Perhaps the last point also of, I think, increasing importance in the future is the spread. When it's not only people that are traveling around the world, it's also things we would not want to see traveling, bacteria, pandemics. We had very serious activities 2 years ago in West Africa with the Ebola crisis, and we did a lot to contain it, and we did a lot also to help the local populations and to evacuate where possible people affected. What are we doing in Europe to better protect the EU citizens affected by disasters? I mentioned already in my initial words the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. It consists of 34 participating countries. We have a relatively modest budget of 35 million per year, and it's coordinated by my DG. We focus on prevention, preparedness, and disaster response, for example, by co-financing or helping develop early warning systems. The GTAX is one example, Global Disaster Alert and Coordination System. It provides early warning information that is also accessible to the general public. We have at the moment about 25,000 subscribers for this tool, where you can get information about cyclones, earthquakes, floods, and a number of other things. Of course, early warning for earthquakes is not really possible, but we see storms, for example, several days before. Give you a most recent example. There is now a storm hitting Madagascar. We knew about that already for a few days, and we could help prepare the government there. Preparedness is a second layer of our activities. We do that through an extensive training and exercise program to train European response teams. Concretely speaking, this means this is actually member states' response teams. For Germany, for example, one of our key partners is the Technische Hilfswerk, the disaster relief association in Germany. And they are trained to be able to rapidly deploy in case of any major disaster worldwide. We also established, together with the member states, a pool of response assets, medical teams, search and rescue teams, pumping teams for floods, but we're also working on more sophisticated tools, DVI, disaster victim identification, and many other things. And we do risk analysis. Here, there's another sort of parallel to what you are doing. We have our specific teams who constantly monitor events worldwide and what their potential impact on our activities could be. And the third part, the most visible and important at that stage, is response. Now, you will probably ask, why do we do that at the European? Why do we need a European approach? Why cannot the individual member states deal with that? Well, there are a number of answers for that. In particular, the risks are becoming more and more transnational. If you look at large-scale floods, Rhine River, Danube River, they affect a number of countries, so they need to work together. The second point here is the size and the complexity of specific disasters, which overwhelm any country, even the best prepared countries, like take Japan in 2011. The tsunami and the earthquake, well, triggered a request for assistance from Japan. We also feel and can see that there are efficiency gains through cooperation. I give you an example. We did evacuation of European citizens in a number of major crises. In Lebanon 2006 or Libya 2011, we evacuated almost 6,000 Europeans from the country. Now what we saw is many member states provided planes, airplanes for evacuation, but the planes were not necessarily full. So we can, through our system, manage that one country can take different nationals from different countries. So we make it more efficient. And of course, there's also the notion of solidarity and responsibility. I know in some contexts nowadays solidarity is no longer a positive value, but we still think that we live in what you would call Wertegemeinschaft in German. We're all sitting in the same boat. And that's why this mechanism was established in 2001. It's a kind of safety net. It's a safety net when a specific disaster is of such magnitude that no single country can handle that alone. So we try to do that together, and we have developed an experience of about 200 disaster response operations since 2001. I've already mentioned a number of examples. I'm not going to bother you with all of them. The Indian Ocean, 2004 tsunami. Perhaps a specific emphasis on the last bullet, consular assistance, repatriation of EU citizens. And I think this is an area which is for you most relevant. I mean, our key activity is, of course, helping the people, the local people that are affected, but in many cases, particularly when it's in touristic destinations, we see a lot of EU citizens, and there the member states, the EU member states, can trigger the mechanism and can ask for a coordinated response. Some of you may, well, I come back to that. Just to show you how it works. Well, you may have a disaster anywhere in the world. Our mandate is global, both inside the EU and outside. A country may then address a request for assistance to the ERCC, the Emergency Response Coordination Center in Brussels. We contact our national counterparts in all member states. We collect offers of assistance. Could be teams, could be planes, could be evacuation means. The disaster-stricken country accepts or rejects. We deploy. We deploy also coordination teams on site. We update the information as the emergency goes ahead, and we coordinate transport. A very important element that we have established in 2007. we can actually co-finance transport, be it transport of goods, food, shelter, and so on, but also transport of people, repatriation, medical evacuation, upon request of a country. Very important to note, we do not operate on request of individuals or companies, but it has to be either a country or one of the UN organizations. All of that is coordinated in this room. It's a snapshot of the operations room in Brussels, which is staffed on a 24/7 basis, 365 or 66 days a year. To give you a bit of a flavor on some practical operations here, this is a picture from the inside of a Swedish plane. It's a passenger plane that has been converted into a flying hospital, and here we did an evacuation, a medical evacuation of seriously wounded EU citizens, well, from Spain and the UK. The plane was a Swedish plane, and this happened on request of France. So you can see, it's already Europe. It's a very European. France presidency at the time, Sweden provides the means, evacuation of Spaniards and UK, and we in Brussels, we co-financed this operation. Similar, but on a larger scale, in Libya 2011, you remember that the downfall of the Gaddafi regime led to internal violence. We evacuated within, I think, 2 weeks or so, almost 6,000 Europeans and 32,000 third country nationals from Africa, southern parts of Africa and Asia. We coordinated the input of 11 member states, providing transport facilities, and we co-financed that through the European budget. So just 2 examples, a few more examples. I'm not going into detail, but some of you may have seen the Canadair water bombers on the Mediterranean coast when there's forest fire season in summer. Some of these may actually also be co-financed and supported by the EU. The picture on the right-hand side shows one of our experts in a deployment of a THW water purification plant to Nepal in 2015. I've investigated a little bit, research. Even 1 week after the earthquake, there were still 1,000 tourists unaccounted for. So it's really important that we improve these systems of search and rescue. We do also a lot of humanitarian assistance. Just to round up the picture, DG ECHO spent 2.2 billion euro for humanitarian assistance worldwide, together with 200 implementing partners, NGOs, UN, Red Cross. Now, if you do this, if you're a worldwide actor, and if you represent a company, you have to also take care of your own staff. Let's not forget that. In our case, we have 800 people in headquarters and in 48 field offices. We do about 700 to 900 missions, means travels to high-risk zones. And we have established a security management system to take this, basically to provide a good risk management. Zero risk doesn't exist. If we want zero risks, we can stop operating. So we have to find a way to make the risk acceptable. And we do that with a number of tools, security manuals, identification of high-risk zones on the basis of input from databases, from information directly from the field, so a mix of input. Every mission to a high-risk country has to have a clearance before people can travel, so an analysis, a threat analysis. We do briefings. We have now an obligatory requirement that everybody that goes to a high-risk country has appropriate security training. heat, hostile environment awareness training or others. And we obviously share relevant information with the security network of other organizations, be it on the UN side with the UN DSS or our humanitarian partners. Now, let me conclude with a few points just to raise, to bring things together. Well, security challenges are obviously on the increase and we need to do something about it. All of that affects tourism industry more or less dramatically, no matter where, no matter when. Preparedness is primordial. Response cannot be the only answer to the challenge, so we need to be appropriately prepared, prevent where possible, prepare for the case it happens. A strong cooperation at the EU level is necessary for cases that individual member states or other countries cannot handle on their own. And we have set up this coordination mechanism that I presented, and I think we owe it to our citizens, to your clients, that we further strengthen these mechanisms. Thank you very much. Voilà. Wenn Sie Fragen haben,
if you have any questions, you can also ask your questions in English or in German. Please wait for the microphone.
You mentioned this several mechanisms or several ways that you get information that's available to EU citizens or businesses. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Where could we find those pieces of information, especially in terms of the risk classifications of different destinations in Europe?
Well, it's a good question. Before coming here, I had actually reflected whether I should bring our country risk map here and present it. I finally decided not to do it because I don't want to, well, I don't want this to be public, but I mean, and it's also for our own operations mainly. If I were to give you this map, you would probably not have, let's say, the right use for it because it's really for our own operations. I mean, we all know that South Sudan is a very high-risk area. But what we need to know is where exactly can I go in South Sudan? I think there are not that many tourists in South Sudan, so the usefulness of the tool we do for our own people is relatively limited for you. But of course, all member states, no matter where you come from, they have sort of the information from the foreign offices, foreign ministries. They are regularly updated. And you can consult them, they are public. And I would also assume that at least for the bigger organizations, you have your own security management that also take these into consideration and share this eventually within your associations. So I'm afraid I can't give you a sort of satisfactory answer to your question, but I hope you understand that it's a wide field that we can discuss in an even special session.
Could I just have one more follow-up question?
Yeah.
Very short.
I have to be rude a little bit. Unfortunately, the time is a little bit limited. So could you please
we can
ask him
bilaterally
after the session?
Yeah, I will stay here and then we can discuss bilaterally.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Peter. So now we come to our last speaker. So Olaf Juncker, please come on stage. So he's going to present the work done at Airport Research. So can we handle airports' future security challenge? Olaf.
So thank you very much. for the introduction, and it's very good being here. So I'm pretty happy with that we have this final discussion here, because I think we have very concrete challenges and we have to manage them in detail at very different places. So it's good to have some sort of concept, overall concept, but in the end it's really at a specific place where this problem has to be solved. And this very specific problem, or the place where we have to solve it, is the security control at the airport. So, my name is Olaf Juncker. I'm working for the Airport Research Center. We are airport consultants, so whenever an airport has a problem, some issue, which they cannot solve alone, they will call us and ask for help here. And obviously security controls are a pretty tricky thing, because they are quite annoying to as well airport and the passenger. So I have to speed up a little bit, just a little bit of the background so you understand why I'm standing here. So we do everything around airports, but we really find that the business around security control has increased over the last years. Already before 9/11, I would say, but after 9/11 it was just like, boom, it was just amazing. It's a little bit sad that we have to use such an, or that we use such an event to do our business. But what we try to do is to help both sides, as well airports, to save money, and also on the other hand to make flying safer. So different fields of technology, you can see that here. We focus on the left thing, which is terminal. So it is security control is obviously located inside of the terminal. But it is a very complex situation. Airport is a very complex system, so there are many, many different layers which have to be coordinated. So the arrival of the passengers at the security control depends on how the passengers have been handled at the check-in counter, and so on. So it's very interconnected, makes it a little bit complicated. So what we see here is the airport security. Why do we need it? It's pretty obvious. So we want to assure a safe flight, avoid attacks, everybody knows it. And it has increased definitely. Here on the right side we can see that modern security controls have become very, very complicated. So you have pre-controls, you have final controls, you have statistics, so 10% of you will be checked by random, just go to the left sir please, or ma'am, so could you please open your bag, etc. So it's getting a little bit tricky. So the question is, why has it become more complex? Usually when you had a case which couldn't be covered, or which was detected by the scanners, then usually new technology will be reinvented. Body scanner is a pretty good example in Germany. It has been reintroduced. There were several ethical issues, obviously, you remember that. But finally it is working without any issues, I think. But it takes more time, it makes it more annoying. You feel a little bit helpless maybe when standing there, at least I do. So when I'm there, it is definitely sort of shaming to be controlled, and everybody checks you and things like that. And the question is, how do we get that balance? Security on the one hand, because everybody wants to have a safe flight, nobody wants something to happen, but on the other hand, well, you know what it means to be standing there in a long queue, and it's getting longer and longer, and it just takes time, and somebody touches you. Do we really want that? So where's the break even? How do we get a good balance between the different challenges? We work for two parties, actually, the airport itself, because security takes time, effort, and money, so we have to reduce it. Money, because you need a lot of space when you have queues at the airport, and if it takes time, you need a lot of staff, many people standing there and working. And let's check the passenger's view, on the other hand. I think the major point is the second one, which is, although important, security at airports is annoying to the passengers, definitely. So what do we want to do? We want to reduce the time, so we want to make the control quicker, which means we have to increase the efficiency of such a security control. And this is where we come in place, because what we will do is we will check the analysis and the structure of the security control, and we will try to use buffers which are still available due to inefficient usage, maybe. And we will try to make everybody happy. So the airport, on the one hand, can save a lot of time and money if it gets get the process more efficient and the passenger can have a happier flight on the other hand. So what technology do we have available? So you feel we're getting from the abstract point of view, we need more security, we're getting into the detail, and we want to find out here what can we do to really make it good. Okay, let's take a closer look at this clash of security on the one hand and what we call service level on the other hand. So if the service level at an airport is green, it means everybody's happy, you got no waiting times, or at least only max 5 minutes or something like that. But there is something like this flash over there. It indicates this sort of contradictory, and we have to solve this problem somehow. I will tell you something about the technologies, what we do to make this happen, to bring service level up on the one hand and security level up as well. Okay, what do we do at the Airport Research Center? We have found technologies, simulation technology, because real-life tests are very expensive and very, very complicated. So you would have to organize hundreds of people just trying to do as if they were a passenger and do what a regular passenger would do. So that's just not possible anymore. Most people of you know that simulation is actually used to build some virtual environment where I can do as if something was happening. So I build a model, and we've seen that model before. I will just go back here. So it really looks like this here. This is a virtual model, and the actors here on the screen, they behave like they would behave in reality. Of course, these are assumptions, so sometimes people behave differently, but our experience shows that it's a pretty good way to simulate what would happen in reality, and usually comes close to the reality later on. Right, so where do we get the data from? This is, first of all, the geometry of the security control. We got so-called arrival profiles. This is when the passenger arrives. And the problem is, currently such a security control is pretty reactive. That means you and your flight arrive somewhere, and then the guys at security control, they have done some sort of pre-planning because they know the flight schedule, and they think, well, usually on that flight there are 500 persons, 500 is too much, let's say 300 persons. And so they arrive, so they expect some load of passengers arriving, and they got their staffing, so Mr. X knows he has to be there at 10 o'clock in the morning and so on. But sometimes there are really bad surprises. You know that when the queue grows up at the security control, because the flight was delayed, because the flight didn't show up at all, because you had some irregular things, because there were people sick and they couldn't work, and so on. So very complex things. What we do is we try to make better prognosis. That's the idea behind. The prediction is currently pretty, let's say, average. So we try to find out what information can we use to make a better assumption of when the persons will really appear at the security control. So let's get more information on that, because the more precise we know when people arrive at the security control, the better the planning is that we can do. Okay, when that is done, the simulation can execute, so we make several simulation runs, and we get a result, which is waiting times, queue lengths, and interesting thing is something like optimal staffing. That means when we have exact passenger load, we really know how to open the security control to assure a maximum queue length of 20 persons. And that's pretty amazing. This is not really correct, because level of service is not an output, it's an input. So we put it to the top here, and we say we want a maximum waiting time of 10 minutes to assure the service level. And then the system tells us, well, then you need 10 persons or 10 security lanes to assure a specific level of service. It is pretty obvious that we have to use buffers here, because everything has a technical limit. I mean, if somewhere the security control complex is getting so amazingly complicated and takes so much time, then somewhere the system will just break down. So every technological optimization that we're doing here has limits. It really has limits, definitely. But for now, we're fine. So it seems so that it is possible to cover it. But to be honest, when the laws somewhere tell us, well, you need to do more and more and more and more and more, then somewhere in the airport will just break down. It will not be possible. And this is a very interesting question. And this is what we heard in the discussion before, in the presentations before. Where is the limit? And the question is, do we want it? Do we really want to be video controlled all the time, every step that we do? Great Britain citizens are currently, I think they are recorded by 90 cameras per day or something like that. Isn't that what we want? I'm not sure about it. But to be honest, I'm pretty happy that I don't have to answer these questions. It will be something, it is an ethical question. What we do is just technology to optimize the stuff that we currently have. Right. Let's step ahead. Yeah, that's just I don't want to go too very much into detail, but as a matter of fact, we have the technology to have some sort of predefined maximum waiting time, maximum queue length, and there is some allocation algorithm in the background who tells us the optimum regarding the staff planning or the staff layout that we want to have, just to assure the security length. Another question is how to refine the profiles, so the passenger profiles, when do they arrive at the security control? Good thing for us is everything is flight schedule driven, which makes an airport very controlled, I would say. It's much easier, interestingly, it's much easier to make an airport planning than, let's say, some central station here in Berlin or something like that, because we just know when the flights leave and we know when the passengers usually arrive 3 hours in advance or something like that. So there are technologies to make it even more precise. That has to do with data mining. Maybe some of you have heard about it. So you just check a huge amount of historical data and you try to detect patterns and try to understand the principle which is behind, and then you can use it to make predictions. That's really looking into the future of the next hours, and it really works. There was really a very exciting moment when we realized we can look into the future. Okay, let's check this last sheet here because the time is ticking off a little bit. So what we think and what we can prove already is that simulation tool usage, so some virtual environment where we try to do things, will definitely become more and more the standard tool just to check situations, because the real situation becomes so complex that you just cannot imagine anymore without help of a virtual environment. And interestingly, it is possible then that airports, and not when I say airports, it's obviously different systems which require security control. I mean, everybody of us has been checked, has been security controlled when we entered here this morning. So maybe everywhere. And such a thing here, such a system helps us not to be reactive. So not to work when something has happened already, but to be proactive, because you know what is going to happen. Obviously requires processes that have occurred already in advance. Good, and you know, we're a company, so what we also can do is we can help airports. There are several customers here we have. German international airports are using currently the CAST simulation, and they provide a real-time data prognosis simulation and the staffing optimization, and we help them as a matter of fact, to save a lot of money, which is good for the companies, obviously. And even more important for you, is we keep the passenger service level. So every airport knows that if the queue grows too long, people will not use that airport anymore somewhere. Yeah, if they have alternatives, they will use another airport. And that's really good that they are doing it. So airports are really forced to make sure a specific service level is kept. So you can see here this security and service level, it's both green. I mean, to be honest, sometimes it's not so green, yeah, but it's getting closer at least, and we have got this check mark here. But maybe it's helpful for you to know there are technological possibilities to assure that things are kept under control in the future. Thanks.
So thank you very much, and also for this technological solution. You might have questions, so feel free to ask him after this session. So thank you very much for attending to this session, and all of us are still here for a couple of times, so feel free to ask. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Karapidis. Thank you, Dr. Willing. Thank you, Mr. Juncker, for those quite valuable insights to things that we don't know and we need every day. I would like to point out at the end of this session, and thank you for coming, there will be now quite soon a pilot workshop series. This will be piloted in German together with Fraunhofer Institute. So if you are from a destination or from an institution or from an airport or hospitality, take one of those brochures when you go out, and we will continue this session at 12 o'clock. Thank you.